intention and love brings people together, business systems make them work. And so we want to really create solutions where people can build new communities and new community models that will be sustainable and keep functioning for generations to come. This is really about a large paradigm shift in society. I am the founder of Loci, L-O-C-I, and that is the Latin word for places. And we are developing a geographically distributed network portfolio of real estate holdings built around micro communities and single-family residences. And this is inspired by the mission to provide a gateway drug to community and a gateway drug to nature. And was really driven by trying to give people an option to get out of the city and actually spend time in nature. And so there's obviously a huge retreat culture here in Austin and a lot of other areas, but there's the real healing and the real change happens to people when they actually get to be in a place that is natural for an extended period of time. So we wanted to create a portfolio and create an option for people to actually live extended periods of time in nature, get out of the craziness, and also have ownership in it. So we kind of play with a few fun terms like timeshares that don't suck because you actually own them. And what we end up having is an equity-based formula where you have ownership in the portfolio of all the real estate holdings, which is connected to a time function. So you're able to actually use it, you can buy more time, and it also is available for use in public rentals as well. So you have ownership, you have usage, and any profit that's generated rolls back into the community. So we're creating a circular economy, and we also end up with multiple assets that are not just real estate. We have transportation solutions, we have GeoGrow, and so this is taking it to the next level where instead of trying to eliminate capitalism, because people think it's evil, we just make sure that the benefits and the prosperity that comes from these holdings rolls back into the community and the stakeholders that are actually involved in it. So we are formed as a for-purpose corporation in Washington, and we'll set up entities in other states. But essentially, we want to generate profit, prosperity, and benefit for stakeholders, both within our community and the outside communities, and just make sure that that keeps rolling in and keeps regenerating and keeps growing. This really got inspired for me coming out of this conference in Amsterdam. And I saw a huge movement happening globally. Tom was there, Angelo, things were moving incredibly fast at a global scale where people were developing communities, transitioning the traditional real estate model, starting to open, decentralizing the financing of real estate. The regenerative side is a thing that's happened for a long time, but is really starting to become a profitable thing. Society is changing. We went through the digital baptism of 2020. People have changed their lifestyles. And so my biggest push while I've been working on my project has been we need to really increase the awareness and let people know that this is happening, the demand is there to satisfy it, and there are tools to move forward on that. So right now there are financial vehicles, there are legal structures, all the things are in place to serve an entire emerging generation right now that demands a new lifestyle support system for how they live and how they work. So our whole concept of the places that we're living and working has changed. That's why Loci is places. Ownership has changed. People don't want to buy their house and live in it for 30 years anymore. A new generation wants different lifestyles. One of our core philosophies is lifestyle liquidity. And lifestyle liquidity is made up of three elements. Okay, we have geographic liquidity or geographic freedom, which means people want to be where they want to be. They want to travel, they want to live in different places, short or long term. We have financial liquidity. We need to open up liquidity and make it possible for people to invest and also exit freely, because that stimulates the economy and gets things moving again. So we need to unlock real estate as an actual asset that can be traded and a liquid thing that can be moved around. Ownership has changed. The entire way we think, everybody knows that in the last 4 years, the way people think about life has changed completely. And so we really have to kind of shatter a lot of these paradigms and say, here are the solutions, let's make them happen, and apply them to what we have right now. So we were having a great chat yesterday about how you can structure these things differently, And we need to start to attract those resources, focus them into things that make sense, and push those things forward. Because it's happening fast and we are falling behind. Thanks. Angelo, have at it.
What is Build Cities? We are a global cooperative of startup cities. So what does that mean, right? So there's a couple different varying definitions of startup cities. Austin's a startup city because it attracts a lot of startups. Obviously Silicon Valley, New York, Miami, El Segundo moves recently, but and then there's cities that are startups themselves. There's some in special economic zones like Prospera. There's one in a sovereign nation tribe called Catawba Economic Zone in North Carolina. And then there's also startup cities that are kind of defined like Dubai, or the city itself kind of runs like a startup. So anyways, what we've done is built a platform that is kind of creating a digital twin of cities around the world to essentially seed, scale, emerging startup ecosystems to become, startup cities. And collectively, they all are also stitched together into a cooperative. So the way we've kind of built that out is essentially it's a platform. You can log in today as long as you have a Discord, but we're going to open it up to more. And what we've done is overlay online communities. So one big trend we've kind of noticed, especially post-COVID, is that a lot of people have strong affiliations for their online communities, sometimes more so than their local ones. And so what we've done is kind of want to marry that trend where we overlay the digital communities on physical ones, so that you'd be able to find your kind of digital or network tribes around the world wherever they're at. So, the Sapien or the Loki tribe, you'd be able to find, here's all the ones in Austin, here's all the ones in London, or wherever you're at, you'd be able to find those tribes. And so, kind of, that's what's available today. You can go online again, check it out. There's a place to list your events, projects, and kind of see this interstitial of, or kind of interconnectedness of the different networks around the world. And so we have 58 cities on 6 continents and about 1,000 networks that are on there currently. I'll just end with kind of the longer tail vision, and this is where there's some kind of Web3 magic on the back end for the infrastructure side. We essentially, by leading with the social network, want to then beget financial capital to actually crowdfund ecosystems in each city. So each city you can imagine as being like its own holding company. So like imagine if Austin had a parallel holding company, or Miami had, this is actually particularly more useful for, not useful, but we see a lot more traction in smaller ecosystems. Like imagine a city that's less than 100,000 people, it's kind of like a seed stage startup. And so we want to essentially empower those cities with the tools to have a full financial stack, governance stack, and a social stack as well, to really, fund those ecosystems, fund the economies in those ecosystems where everybody not only owns part of that city, but also the network of the different cities in the platform itself. So let's build in a nutshell. There's a lot of moving pieces, I realize that, but we're doing it, and it's happening, so thanks.
Nice. Can I get one little follow-up there? One of the things I really love about Build is Build R&D, and the clout and credibility that's bringing with real academic research and development resources coming together on that. You want to give just a quick minute and talk about that?
Yeah, so I'd say our kind of piece about Build that's really pulled us through has been our brand. So it's Build _, but you can kind of insert anything after the underscore. So I drove over here from Houston today, part of the Build Houston chapter, Build Austin. We have and that even goes to different business verticals. So we have a Build merch for the business line of clothing. And just recently we started Build R&D, which is literally going to be this kind of decentralized think tank. And so we have people, so not only do we have developers all over the world helping build the product itself, but now we're going to have kind of like this decentralized academia where, I'm on the phone calls with Josh every Friday, and we have somebody from Nigeria, we have somebody from LA, we have somebody from France, and we're all kind of coming together on some of these topics about the network state and coming at it with a very rigorous approach that we can then publish out there and share more research about network states and just kind of this new, very quickly accelerating world that merges physical and digital, and what that means and the kind of downstream implications for that. And hopefully in the next 3 months we'll have our first edition talking about volcano mining. We're crowdsourcing ideas now, so if there's anything that you want to bring up, we're open to feedback. So that's Build R&D. Thanks.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Tom.
Ecosystem and infrastructure. That's really what I've been focusing on for the last many, many years. Born and driven out of just desperation and cynicism about status quo structures. I'm a long-time entrepreneur. I've started many businesses, been in business, a big business, small business, public and private, nonprofit, NGO, for my first 30 years of my career, and really got dissatisfied with status quo structures. No matter what we tried, all the clever techniques, all the management consultancies, all the high-performance teaming, all the HR products for engagement, it reliably would fail about 18 months later. And its wake would leave nothing but cynicism. And having done that to others and having had that done to me, I really kind of got tired of it. And so I started looking for alternatives. And I crossed paths with a to-be business partner in 2006 who was experimenting in a software company in Pennsylvania. And some of you might know Brian Robertson here in Austin, or Holacracy. But in 2007, we co-founded a company called Holacracy One. And it had its bold purpose to replace management hierarchy, to get rid of the very power structure that has been causing us all the problems in the first place. So I have been practicing a decentralized approach to management for over 17 years. I have been working without a boss. I have been working not being a boss, leading people who are inspired by purpose to come together, coordinate effort, to get amazing work done with a new system that completely replaces management hierarchy. And I'm never going back. So that story began in 2007, but having replaced management hierarchy was cool. We had book published, software. There's a software product called GlassFrog, which is amazing. There's a constitution. There's a global footprint, international adoption. But the entrepreneur in me was saying, we got rid of one source of power structure, the management hierarchy, but what about where power also lives? In the legal and capital structure, in the investment structure, in shareholders, in officers, boards, directors with antique things called voting rights. Really weird stuff. And if we have a system that doesn't need bosses, what the heck are we still doing with employees, right? So we had two outdated structures, legal and capital, and employment or labor. And so I launched a company in 2015 called Encode to encode some new rules. And this is actually quite boring work, but it leads to amazing experiences. The boring work is we rewrite the legal code. We literally ground these new legal entities in purpose. We shift the fiduciary away from shareholder and to purpose. And we make this completely legally anchored in jurisdictions all over the world. So now entrepreneurs have another path. They can actually register a legal entity that is fully decentralized, fully autonomous, and fully able to bring people together around a common purpose. And so the decentralization movement has been talking about DAOs, right, for a very long time. The company that we started in 2015, I claim, was the first full decentralized autonomous organization, just not running on blockchain yet. So we started that process in 2015, and then we started launching other companies and tokens. We started to further decentralize structures. And we've launched since 2015 7 additional companies in real estate, in venture capital, reinventing both of those, in non-for-profits, in professional development, 2 entheogenic related businesses with the resurgence of entheogens in the world and their beneficial effect on humanity. And so we're creating all kinds of organizations and binding them together in an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is a collective of organizations who all embrace this power shift. And that's the fundamental principle that I've been working on for the last 15 years. Shifting power structures for real, legally, so that we can actually change the way we work, where you don't have to have a boss, you don't have to be a CEO, you don't have to have shareholders that can trump you. You can actually be in a system that is all for purpose and draw people to that. So we've been applying these rules, these principles, for a very long time, since 2007. We then expanded them to the legal capital labor structures. And as Joshua said, I met him in Amsterdam because now there's contemplation of moving them out to social scale. So the network state, the stuff that you guys are doing, taking these principles and then applying them out to broader communities, and social scale, I think, is the very next thing. So I am all in on shifting power, shifting status quo, decentralizing our control, and playing a completely different game to get purposeful work done.
Founding partner of a company called Sphinx Capital, and we recently launched a fund called Clear Channel Capital. And I've been in real estate lending, finance for over 10 years now. And it started off just in regular real estate, working with multifamily, commercial properties, residential. And over time, my personal interest in a lot of these topics that we're exploring here today, things that you guys are interested in, regenerative development, agriculture, DAOs, network states, all these things led to me seeking to connect with people who are building projects in these areas and then sourcing financing for it. And out of that, I realized there's a lot of people with a lot of money who don't understand a lot of these things. And when we start talking about them, their eyes glaze over and they decide to invest in the next multifamily project they see because it's something that they can understand. So we realize there's a big need to be able to clearly communicate what these things are in language that the people with the money will understand so that they feel like they can invest in it, they feel like they understand it, they feel safe flowing resources into it. So that's the aim of Clear Channel Capital, and our motto is clarity is currency. So we take people who have projects, whether that's right now primarily it is real estate projects, so people who are building things like eco-villages, retreat centers, biodynamic farms, anything that has a regenerative or sustainable component to it. And we help them prepare the language around it, the marketing around it, the financial modeling, everything in a way that is attractive to the places that we've identified as being willing, ready, and able to invest in those types of projects. And so a lot of this, as Joshua touched on, Europe is very far ahead of the US in this space. There are huge funds there that are well aware of the success of communal, regenerative, human-friendly type development. And so it's a matter of taking the momentum they've created there and helping projects that are in other places in the world, in the US, in Central America, South America, Africa, and help them position themselves and recognize that they can get access to the same funds that have been flowing and are continuing to flow in greater amounts to these types of projects in Europe. They can access the same thing just simply by changing the way they're presenting it and changing certain aspects of their project, or even just realizing their project already fits those investors' mandates. It's just a matter of recognizing that the money's there and available. So that's our mission. Right now we're meeting with as many investors as we can, both here and overseas, and connecting with projects who are ready to go for funding or need support in tailoring their message, tailoring their financials, the whole thing, so that they can then go for the financing.
We're a soil-based growing system. We use soil and gravity to grow plants in 3D. And I think you can see up behind me, essentially, it's a soil-filled, centrally irrigated cylinder. We eliminate the need for watering and weeding. We eliminate the grand majority of pathogens, disease, and most of the labor and equipment associated with agriculture. We can grow the full cross-section of specialty crops in a self-contained system that doesn't require more land than is necessary for the cylinders to stand on. We can replace very large amounts of field-based production with a self-contained system that is fully regenerative. We produce more soil than we use, and we upcycle enormous amounts of organic waste into soil inputs that we can use not only to grow specialty crops in our system, but also for ecological restoration and to bring land back in the area around our greenhouse. We are a truly circular economy system, working essentially on an outcomes-based finance basis with fresh produce buyers. So rather than what most farmers are doing today, which is essentially growing crops, taking them to market and trying to sell them before they die, we don't ever plant anything that's not already sold. So in working with buyers in advance, we can fill a tremendous amount of detail into purchase agreements, the attributes of the crop,
Can we say that this is one of the first public shares of this?
This is, yeah. So a quick aside, what you see behind us.
Tilt the mic up a little bit. The bottom up.
Is that better?
Beautiful.
All
There.
right. All
Just sold
right.
your voice. Bring it. Share it.
So my father invented GeoGrow 11 years ago. We've built 19 prototypes. We've grown 175 varieties of plants. And about 5 years ago, we started working with the chief scientist at NASA, the head of agriculture at NASA, and a bunch of astrobiologists on developing this system for space. And what you see behind us is a design that we developed last year to be sent to the space station. We haven't flown it yet, but we will get some payload for it. For the moment, we're growing in Houston, wheatgrass, romaine, and arugula, and we're competing in the Plant the Moon and Mars Challenge. And so what you see behind us is video from the last, this has only been planted for 6 days, so it can't be that old. But it's growing like crazy. The wheatgrass has already outgrown the 6 inches of enclosure we had, so we actually have to harvest 3 weeks early because the wheatgrass grew too fast. In general, we're developing for applications with fresh produce buyers at scale. So food manufacturers, food service, hospitality. We're working with people that have very large waste streams of organic and food waste, whether that's mills or distilleries or breweries or farm waste, animal waste, that kind of thing. And essentially through that, we upcycle organic waste into our inputs, grow crops with them, and then post-harvest, all of our stems and stalks and roots, all of the post-harvest soil is actually richer than it was when it went in. So post-harvest, all of our soil is actually a biostimulant. We, by upcycling post-consumer waste, are regenerative before we plant, and then we're doubly regenerative after we harvest. So it's an opportunity to scale not only climate mitigation, but landfill mitigation, methane, carbon mitigation. The application of what we create in that process, which is called humus soil, mitigates droughts, brings back water, brings back land, does all kinds of environmental remediation with heavy metals. So this is the system we want to bring to the world. We're self-contained and modular. Essentially, we're demand-based. So the conversation is either with fresh produce buyers who buy an enormous amount and pay the premiums for premium fresh produce, or for agricultural and organic waste at scale. Those are really where we can help. And so when we saw what Josh was doing with Loki, we saw an opportunity to take a community that, as all communities do, produces waste, and a community that, as all communities do, produces opportunities for its residents. And we see in Loki a unique circular economy that exists essentially to serve its residents, which not a lot of communities do. But in this case, we can create true economic opportunity for the residents of the community, real impacts in the community around it, upcycling waste and bringing back land, and we can create jobs and tax revenue. And so that's the model we really see an opportunity to scale, with Josh and Loki. And thank you all for coming today to learn about it.
Kind of where do you start, right? There's so much that we need to address in our daily lives that seem hard to kind of come by, and how to address it. So, kind of a little back history, not to go too deep into the rabbit hole. I kind of had a vision for this stuff back in circa 2008. I was in the mortgage business, and I watched basically economies collapse, and world economies completely collapse. So when I saw that, and I saw that happen in my life, I reevaluated not the economic system, but all the systems around me. And I think all of us can see, and even now more than ever, big corporations and entities are buying up all aspects of our lives. And this not necessarily isn't a bad thing if their agenda was to make sure that we had good, healthy things coming into our environment. So when you talk about food production, you talk about the quality of food. And we can all go down that rabbit hole. Glyphosates, pesticides, quality of food, nutrients, the cost of food. You talk about housing, what we build the houses out of, how they're so inefficient. There's always a statement like solar doesn't work. Well, solar doesn't work on these homes. So you talk about homes, housing, water. Then you get into deeper parts of how all stuff interconnects, and communities, and how we build those things around us, stuff, architecture in our community. So really, Avalon is basically a drive for a regenerative living center. I've spent basically, I bought the land in 2011. I've been out there trying to do as much as I can on my own to see, not only to build my skills, but to see what the challenges are across the board. And I've come to know them very intimately, daily. What I can accomplish, what I need help with, how volunteers work. I started on my own Earthship home. It's like an earthen home, probably most room knows what that is. Started developing the land myself. And you get to a point to where you kind of like need help, and that help looks like an economic form. So that's where kind of I'm at between there and now. The interesting thing about it, back in 2008 and 2009 and 2011, there was no economic viability like there is now to monetize these situations. Airbnb did not exist really. So these are exciting times because with the rise of technology, the rise of the market and the consciousness around us, people understanding, educating, and seeing more of the problems that are at hand, people are joining. People are saying yes, and it actually supports these things that we're doing. So it's just time for basically to take this land that I have. We have 28 acres. I've met Davison through a mutual friend, and he's got a similar vision. So we're kind of like joining our visions together to build a regenerative living center with cabins. Each one of those cabins we outfitted with solar, with batteries, with wind turbines, with monitoring for all those things, fuel cells, so people can come in and really see the practical part of this stuff and how they can take it back to their lives. So really it's just an education center for people to come out and also have those good experiences and see what we can accomplish through permaculture food forests, through all aspects of what we're trying to accomplish, kind of like approaching every piece for personal sovereignty. And not only basically what I say is like the practical part of this is if you make $100,000 a year, you should be able to save it for your future and to basically compound that interest. If you spend it all every single year, by the time you reach retirement, you don't own your life. And now BlackRock, Vanguard, and everybody else does. So that's what kind of the drive of what Avalon's about and what we're doing. And I'll give Davison his time to kind of go into his enumeration of it.
My name is Davison Kirchmeyer. I have been involved in sales for like the last 10 years, solar industry specifically, energy and real estate investing. And so the last 10, 15 years, really this is, I feel like this is like my life's work is really, it's been a work of observing the problems, It's so easy to do this and point the finger on, the religious spectrum or the political spectrum or the personal spectrum. We all want to blame someone else for the problems in our lives. And so I think what Avalon's really about is just pointing the finger outward to looking inward on how do we really, as Bob alluded to, is like really own our lives. Well, what do we need? Well, what we need is what the corporations, like the big corporations, are buying all of, right? So it's like, how do we take control over all of the basic necessities that not only we need, but everyone in the world? So we believe that, from a small structure, and I appreciate all these other projects around like local economies, really beautiful stuff. I think there's a precipice of humanity's really growing and seeing the opportunities and merging technology with some ancient practices, right? So we're looking to basically give people an opportunity to see what's out there, what is available from energy technology systems, storage systems, agriculture, water catchment, even just like from a mental health and spiritual standpoint, like how do we really ground back into what matters most for us, right? And so it's pretty basic, like come out, live on, like hang out on the land, short-term rentals. We're obviously, in siphoning economics into the spiritual, some of these answers that everyone kind of looks to for community. Everyone wants community, but how do we make it work? Well, like a gentleman said earlier, it's like the economics have to make sense. So it's like small scale, local economy, like come hang out, find whatever answers for you. Like as a guest at Avalon Acres, it's like, what questions do you have? Whether that's internally or externally, learn how to, grow your own food, learn how to catch your own water, filter it, learn how to just take care of yourself in a really kind of intimate way, and people joining in that movement. So very early on in our well, I'll say it's early on in my project. I mean, I do feel like it's life's work, and luckily I met Bob, who's been kind of an OG in building. You know, if anyone's heard of Earthships, like he worked with Mike Reynolds on some Earthships. Like he's an OG, he's for real. So I've been able to have the blessing to get to know him for the last couple of years, and so we're super excited.
Gloria, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah,
What are we going to talk about?
glamping.
So I have been in the tiny and alternative space now for over 6 years. My company is Lavender Moon Spaces, and I started out converting van and buses into off-grid living spaces. And the reason that I got into that is because as a real estate agent, I found that there were a lot of people that weren't being served, and it was the people like me that wanted more freedom in their lifestyle and didn't want to be tied down to debt, and also didn't want to have to come up with a lot of money for an uncertain investment. And that's where the market was at when I was, coming of age and starting to make money, and I was really thinking about what do I want to put my time and energy into. And I just looked at the market and I was like, this just isn't it. There needs to be something else. And so I converted a shuttle bus and I got into the tiny space, and what I found was a lot of people very similar to me. Whereas in the real estate market, I found a lot of people that, as agents tended to be very territorial. It felt like this community was very giving and open-minded and supportive of each other. And so I really dove into that community and built that business out until I couldn't build it out anymore. The model that I was building and the custom vans and buses that I was creating, it was a lot of overhead time and energy, and I just wasn't making enough to be able to outsource these things. So I said, let me pump the brakes on this and just take a step back and tune back into myself and this market and this community. And when I went back to my roots, I really love real estate investing, and that's how I look at everything in life. And so I started looking at the market and thinking, where are we missing something? And when I started to look more into campgrounds and glamp grounds, I started to see there's a huge opportunity here that a lot of people are just now starting to learn about and get into. So that's where Novolux was born. And it's basically a luxury campground mixed with nature and art. So I'm working on integrating a lot of these like festival-like elements that we like to go out and experience is going to be on site. There's also going to be a regenerative aspect, so there's going to be food on the property that guests are welcome to choose. So this is pretty much like an in-between from living in the city to living in community. This is that like in-between taste test that people get to try out. We're also going to be hosting corporate retreats for different kinds of ceremonies, weddings, and also just date weekends.